I'm Joshua Gould, and for today's presentation in our conspiracy theories class, I'm tackling a big question. Did Jesus actually resurrect? As a Christian, I believe he did, but I'm excited to explore both sides of this debate with an open mind. The resurrection is the cornerstone of Christianity, claiming Jesus rose from the dead after his crucifixion around 30 CE. But skeptics see it as a myth, or even a conspiracy, a story crafted or misunderstood by early followers. Why does this fit a conspiracy theories class? Because the resurrection's miraculous nature invites skepticism, alternative explanations, and debate about what really happened. Today, I'll walk you through the historical context, arguments for and against the resurrection, the cultural subtext behind the debate, and my own conclusions. My goal is to present the evidence fairly, respecting both faith and skepticism, so we can wrestle through this question together. Let's dive in. To understand the resurrection debate, we need to step into the world of first century Judea. Jesus, a Jewish teacher, was crucified by the Romans around 30 to 33 CE for claiming to be the Messiah. His followers later claimed he rose from the dead, a belief that sparked Christianity, and to this day, there are 1 in 3 people call themselves Christians. That is over 3 billion people in our world today who claim to be a Christian. Our main sources are the New Testament Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, written 20 to 70 years after Jesus' death, and a few non-Christian references, like the Jewish historian Josephus, who mentions Jesus in his Antiquities of the Jews. These sources aren't perfect. They're based on oral traditions, and skeptics point out the Gospel's theological bias. In the cultural context, Jews in Jesus' time were expecting a Messiah to liberate them from Roman rule. Some believed in resurrection as a future hope, but a single person rising before the end times was radical. Romans, meanwhile, were skeptical of miracles and saw Christians as a threat, often persecuting them. Stories like the resurrection spread through oral tradition before being written down, which could lead to embellishment or it could lead to accuracy, depending on your view. Why does this matter? The resurrection claim was both believable to Jews hoping for divine intervention and suspicious to Romans and skeptics who questioned supernatural events. This tension sets the stage for why the resurrection is still debated today, with some seeing it as a divine truth and others as a possible conspiracy or misunderstanding. Let's look at the evidence. Let's start with why many, including me, believe Jesus actually resurrected. The strongest evidence comes from the New Testament. The Gospels describe Jesus' crucifixion, burial, and then an empty tomb discovered by women like Mary of Magdalene. Over 40 days, Jesus reportedly appeared to his disciples and to over 500 people at once, and even to a man named Paul, a former skeptic and actual Christian killer, on the road to Damascus. These accounts, written within the lifetime of eyewitnesses, suggest something extraordinary happened. Another point of view is the rapid growth of Christianity. Despite facing persecution, early Christians spread their message fearlessly. Why? Historians like N.T. Wright argue it's because they genuinely believed they saw the risen Jesus. The empty tomb is key here. Most scholars, even skeptics, agree the tomb was empty, as it would have been easy for opponents in Jerusalem to disprove the claim by showing Jesus' body. Yet no body was produced. The transformation of the disciples is also compelling. They went from terrified, scattered followers after the crucifixion to bold martyrs willing to die for their faith. Would they die for a lie they made up? It's really unlikely. Scholars like Gary Habermas use the minimal facts approach, noting that even skeptical historians accept key points. For example, Jesus died, his tomb was empty, and his followers believed they saw him alive. The resurrection, they argue, is the best explanation for these facts. As a Christian, I find this evidence persuasive, especially combined with faith. But it's not airtight. History can't prove miracles definitively. Still, the historical data and the disciples' changed lives make a strong case that something miraculous happened. Let's now consider the other side. Let's explore why skeptics doubt the resurrection. Critics like Bart Ehrman argue it's a myth that grew over time, a common feature of ancient oral traditions. They point to discrepancies in the Gospels, like different details about who visited the tomb or when Jesus appeared, as evidence of legendary development. Plus, there's little contemporary non Christian evidence, which skeptics say you'd expect for such a dramatic event. Several alternative theories exist fitting the conspiracy angle. The stolen body hypothesis, for one, mentioned in Matthew's Gospel, suggests disciples took Jesus' body to fake the resurrection. But this struggles to explain why disciples would risk death for a hoax. The swoon theory claims Jesus didn't die but fainted on the cross and later revived. Medical experts counter that crucifixion was brutal, and surviving it, especially after Roman confirmation of death, is implausible. Another idea is the hallucination hypothesis. Disciples, grieving and desperate, had visions they mistook for a risen Jesus. Now, this could be explained in individual sightings, but group appearances to hundreds are harder to dismiss as hallucinations. In fact, it's a statistical impossibility for a mass hallucination at that size. Some skeptics also argue the resurrection story borrows from pagan myths, like Osiris or Mithras. Through these parallels are often vague and debated. Finally, there's a psychological angle. Early Christians might have been swept up in groupthink, amplifying their beliefs in a resurrection without hard evidence. While these theories offer plausible alternatives, they face challenges, like explaining the empty tomb or the disciples' transformation. Still, they highlight why the resurrection remains a point of contention, especially for those prioritizing empirical evidence over faith. So, you may ask, why is the resurrection still debated? Well, it's more than just history, it's about belief, culture, and epistemology. For Christians, the resurrection proves Jesus' divinity, making it central to faith. But for skeptics, especially since the Enlightenment, miracles don't fit a scientific worldview. This clash, faith versus reason, fuels the debate. In a conspiracy theory lens, alternative explanations like stolen bodies or hallucinations appeal because they suggest a cover up or misinterpretation by early Christians. These theories resonate in a world skeptical and of authority and grand claims. Culturally, first century Jews were open to miracles, but Romans and modern skeptics demand hard proof. The lack of definitive evidence, like a signed note from Jesus, keeps the question alive. The debate also reflects how we approach truth. Can history verify a miracle? Believers say the evidence points to something divine. Skeptics say extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence. This tension explains why the resurrection remains a lightning rod for discussion conspiracy theories, and personal reflection. So, did Jesus actually resurrect? The evidence is compelling, but not conclusive. On one hand, the empty tomb, the disciples' transformation, and the rise of Christianity suggest something extraordinary happened. Something I, as a Christian, believe was the resurrection. On the other hand, skeptical theories like hallucinations or mythological borrowing offer plausible alternatives, especially if you prioritize empirical evidence. History can't prove or disprove miracles. The Gospels provide strong testimony, but their discrepancies and lack of outside corroboration leave room for doubt. The debate persists because it's not just about facts, it's about what we're willing to believe. As a Christian, I find the historical evidence, combined with faith, points to a risen Jesus. But I respect those who see it as a myth or misunderstanding, given the limits of historical inquiry. For our conspiracy theories class, the resurrection shows how a single event can spark competing narratives, each with its own logic. I'll leave you with this. Is the resurrection a divine truth, a sincere misunderstanding, or a crafted narrative? What do you think explains the empty tomb? Anyways, thanks for listening, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.